G'day you mob, Pete here from Aussie English. Welcome to this episode of the Goss. The episode's where I sit down with my old man and we have a chat, a discussion about the week's news, current affairs, everything like that. Interesting stuff that's come up whether in Australia or elsewhere in the world that we think having a chat about is going to help you improve your listening comprehension, widen your vocab, everything like that. You'll also get to learn about our opinions on these things obviously too, and hopefully form your own. Remember, you don't have to agree with us. Just use us as a way of, developing your own thoughts and opinions on these topics. Anyway, today's episode is all about Australia's largest predators, which are dingoes on the mainland and Tasmanian devils in Tasmania, and they have recently been moved to a location north of Sydney. So something's going on there in the works where we may see Tasmanian devils released into the wild in Australia, though I don't know if they'll be called Tasmanian devils anymore if they are on the mainland. That's a question for you. What do you call a Tasmanian devil that's found near Sydney? Anyway, guys, without any further ado, smack the bird. Let's get into it.
Yeah, that was Puppies and Kittens, even though it was birds, part one. Puppies and Kittens Part 2, and this one's old. This one, old in a sense. I think the story came out about, what's the date? 21st of September, where a dingo pup was found in northeastern Victoria.
Alpine dingo.
And it was DNA tested and found to be pure Alpine dingo, which currently, you're the taxonomist. I'm not, and you're probably not a, dog
dingo taxonomist.
But currently, I believe that the Alpine dingo is separated as a different species, certainly subspecies.
I'd have to look into it. I haven't seen the studies. I saw the news.
They're talking about it as a pure species.
This is where it gets so hard to sort of
a species
argue,
concept at that point is, it's irrelevant. It's a human construct anyway. But
we can talk a bit about dingoes because it ties in with the story I want to tell you next. But they arrived here, I think, within the last 4,500 years.
Between 4,000 and 6,000 years ago.
They originally thought they'd come through Southeast Asia, through Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, but I think more recently the research has shown that they came through a migration of people from India that happened about 4,500 years ago, because Indigenous people here in Australia have Indian DNA in them.
Yeah.
That shows there was at least one event of migration, and that tends to coincide with the oldest date of dingo evidence in Australia, which also coincides with a lot of these mainland predators like the thylacine and the Tassie devil disappearing off the mainland and then only being found in Tasmania. But the difficulty is, I think, when you have a species that is effectively invasive, that's been in a place for 4,500 years max, and the ecological system has kind of reached equilibrium, where there is a lot of destruction that's been done in terms of species going extinct, but then that species that's invaded, the dingo's kind of taken the place of something like the thylacine,
part of the new ecosystem,
and is now the top predator. And so I think a big issue that we have in Australia, especially from state to state, is that we have different laws that either protect or don't protect dingoes. So some states will say they're wild dogs and you can just shoot any dog you see, just kill them all, bait them all, they're a pest, they're a problem for livestock. And then other states will say, actually, you can't shoot them at all because they're, native animals, so it would be the same as you killing a kangaroo or something with no permission to do so. But that's the trouble we end up with. And I think the other interesting stuff regarding dingoes is that they had, since European colonisation on the mainland, intermingled so much with just feral dogs that we just assumed that they were no longer pure dingoes anyway. And that complicates the argument again even further as to whether or not you can serve these animals. Exactly. But and to sort of go even further, when I was chatting to Ewan Ritchie from Deakin University, who studies dingoes, he's kind of like, if it looks like a dingo and acts like a dingo, what does it matter? So if you do have feral dogs that have interbred with dingoes, but now those animals are now acting dingoes as dingoes in terms of their ecology and how they behave with the environment, does it matter if they're feral dogs or not, right? Because they're just feral dogs 4,000 years later. But the interesting thing was that I think it was Fraser Island when you took me there.
Yeah.
Was that when I was 12?
2000.
13. they're the last pure dingoes that we knew about, at least, from Australia, because there had been no feral dogs introduced, I think, into, the biggest sand island in the world,
right?
Been
a viable population of feral dogs on Fraser Island.
Yeah, so that was the sort of thing that we thought, at least until recently, until I saw this story, that there are no purebred dingoes on the mainland. But obviously, new research has shown that the Alpine dingo in southeast Australia, Alpine because it lives in the mountains, high up, and it's a lot, I wanted to say woollier, I would say furrier, right? Like the fur is a lot denser.
It's bigger dog, furrier. Thicker. And it's, regardless of whether we call it a species or a subspecies or a breed or whatever you want to call it.
It's a unit.
A unit.
It can be measured.
The Alpine dingo was distinctly different from every other dingo in Australia. And it was always perceived as being the purest, other than the Fraser Island ones, because of its effective isolation, because most of the alpine areas in Victoria and southern New South Wales, even though there are little sort of fingers of agricultural land throughout them, are effectively isolated from large human populations and therefore large dog populations. So there had not been a lot of interbreeding, but that had appeared to have broken down, and the hypothesis was that, well, eventually they have just been diluted. Their DNA, the uniqueness of their DNA had just been diluted. But this one was, ironically, the second one that's been found in 2 years. There was one found a year ago, which is possibly a more interesting story than this one. This one is really interesting because it reinforces that there is clearly at least, and these were 300 something kilometres apart.
But when they say found, what do they mean? As in captured, or as in?
Well, this one apparently was just found on a road.
As a puppy?
As a puppy.
Random.
Who knows? It might have been rolled over by a car or something. Yeah. It was found on a road. The other one was dropped out of the sky. It literally dropped out of the sky into a farmland.
That was the thing that I heard. Was that a metaphor?
The theory is that a wedge-tailed eagle got it.
Really?
And dropped it.
Jesus.
And didn't come back to get it. So
did it have injuries?
I presume so, but I don't know whether it survived or whatever. But it was. Yeah. It's one of the where
the genetics did.
Yeah, the genetics survived. The DNA survived, and so that was a year ago. And people thought, oh, this is unique, and now it's not unique. And because they were so far apart, it's unlikely they were from the same breeding population. So there are at least two, if not a continuous breeding population of them in northern Victoria, which is cool.
It's very weird because it would be like you having, a different species of kangaroos found in America that's completely different from the Australian version. And that when Europeans, maybe Britain's a better example, in Britain, and when Europeans came to Australia, they brought with them kangaroos that could interbreed with the local kangaroos.
Exactly.
And you let all those kangaroos go, they end up, spreading across the entire continent. And then later you find in a specific area that you have a population of native Australian kangaroos that have never interbred with these introduced kangaroos, despite them being there. Because you would imagine in the alpine regions, there's going to be dogs that get in there at some point, enough to at least interbreed with the dingoes. So it's interesting if there's something going on.
But it is so dilute that there's no detectable DNA differences between them.
But we know that there's, 3 to 7% Neanderthal DNA in humans,
of course,
from 25 plus thousand years ago, right?
That's uniquely Neanderthal.
Yeah.
There's 95% chimpanzee DNA in humans. Our DNA is 95%.
But I mean, detectable. For the Neanderthal, that's interesting enough. And that happened, 4 or 5 times longer ago. So it's crazy if
that was 20,000 years ago.
Yeah, or more.
Yeah.
But the thing this sort of tied in with was the Tasmanian devils that have recently been released into a security population in Sydney, outside of Sydney. I think it was, where was it? Barrington Tops, 3.5 hours north of Sydney.
Yeah.
So they, after 3,000 years of the Tasmanian devil going extinct on the mainland, which I assume happened sort of simultaneously with the thylacine. There were apparently 5 species of thylacine on the mainland. Yeah. They all went extinct, the Tasmanian tiger, I guess we would call it today. And so because of the contagious facial tumour disease issue that's sort of been plaguing Tassie devils and has reduced their numbers down, from 150,000 in the 90s to 25,000 today in Tasmania, since I was doing, I think, probably my master's, people like you and Richie, who I've interviewed on the podcast, go check him out, have been pushing for trying to get a population of Tasmanian devils that are free of this disease, this contagious cancer that is effectively caused, it appears on the face, and because Tassie devils interact with one another by aggressively biting each other's faces, they cause wounds, and the cancer ends up spreading and stops them from eating
it's a virally
rapidly.
caused cancer. Yeah.
And they end up dying, from starvation. But they've introduced 26 of these little carnivorous mammals into a 400-hectare, 1,000-acre sanctuary at Barrington Tops, and they're hoping to grow this breeding program and then have a security population. But I hope also that they end up releasing them back into the wild, because they're a big control in terms of foxes and cats, because they pick up all the carrion. So any of these animals that die, they probably go after rabbits, but any of these animals that die, you often see in Tasmania, I think, sides of the roads.
Tasmania is the roadkill capital of the world.
They'll be eating all the roadkill.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
It will. I think there's a population, and I can't remember, it might be Maria Island, it might be another island off the coast of Tasmania.
It rings a bell.
That there's another security population that was being released
on one of those islands. Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. They were worried for a long time that the facial tumour thing, I think it started in the west and it was spreading east
progressively.
Over the years, and they were worried it would just subsume the entire population and wipe the species out. And so that was the idea of, we need to take like 1,000 of these animals and set them up on the mainland away from this, so that they're isolated. And even if we don't release them on the mainland in Australia, that's a sort of different question and problem. We'll have that population that we could potentially reintroduce into Tasmania, or even just keep taking individuals from and releasing them back into the wild here.
And assuming that at some stage there is a cure found for this contagious cancer that they get, then having that maintaining that population that can be reintroduced is going to be important. The trouble at the moment is that there's not much point in reintroducing them if all you're doing is just adding to the number that are effectively going to get the disease in the end anyway.
It's literally pouring fuel on the fire.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Me and Noah, he's here as well, smacking the microphone with his spoon. That was another episode of the Goss. Don't forget, guys, if you want to get access to all of the Goss episodes, the transcripts, the MP3s, the videos, the entire episodes from 1 to, I think we're up to like 40-something now. Yeah, that's it, mate. Just go to aussieenglish.com.au and you can sign up for those. Anyway, I'm Pete, your host. This has been another Aussie English episode. It's a pleasure, and I'll see you soon.